That's nice. That was the last presentation of this whole symposium, and thank you to the virtuality of this symposium. We are perfectly on time. It was 16:37, and it is 16:37, so that's perfect. And then we can just move directly, I think, to the roundtable. And I will leave the microphone to Julian Schechter, that as usual will ask very challenging questions to the different people here.
I hope, Stefano, thank you very much for this last sharing community. I hope my voice is okay. I'm a little sick as something is going around, you know, a certain virus, but it's going to be okay since I'm far away from you and I'm only virtual. So you don't have any risks, I guess, by just listening to me. But I hope still the voice is okay. I would gladly ask the authors to turn their camera on, but they already did, so that's fine with me. Anyone can also participate just by opening his mic. We are only 15 persons, or just by clicking in the menu, in the Zoom menu, you can raise the hand, so you can ask for the mic if you need it. And we'll try to go around everyone who wants to speak, because that's the aim. And we had some great discussions in the last roundtables. I hope we will also today. As always, I got a maybe provocative question and also a title for this roundtable, which is from reckless to cautious. We all behave differently while playing games. Maybe some of you are going straight to the end of a game. Some of you are just collecting all the coins possible in every corner of the game. These are most common ways to play games. We'll address this subject. And the question behind that is, as we behave differently in games, can games really train us for real life? Because that's the aim of some of the presentations that we have, is to simulate how we do it in real life. And as we play differently, can they still help us in real life? But to get there, my first question will be a technology question. We've addressed a little bit this issue in the last roundtables, but maybe not thoroughly enough. Do you think around that table today that we have today the technology, VR, for example, which is in use in 3 of the 4 projects today? Do we have now the technology to replicate enough the real life in games? Are we there yet? Can we say that games can replicate real life? And I will try to go to the beekeepers first, because it's really the aim of your game is to replicate. And do you think we have the technology? I don't know, Naomi or Sina, who wants to go first?
It's a very good question. Yeah, like that is kind of the thing, because like especially well, in a lot of like, you know, I think this comes up a lot when you see a lot of these like VR serious games, or like even VR, or just VR training in general. You you always have to have this like you have to have the, you know, this thought in the back of your mind of like, oh well, you know, how close, how can we ensure that like the things that we're training people to do in VR, that they'll still be able to apply that to real life. So you have to make sure that like the actions that they're taking are things that they can still apply to real world tasks. In terms of although I guess if you look at just strictly technology, if if you're specifically asking the question of accurate simulation of real life, it's difficult, because I think like a lot of VR systems still, like even if they look like even if you're talking about like if you're looking at like Half-Life Alyx, for instance, with a Valve Index, which looks really great and has like a really great, like, you know, like beer bottle shader thing that like, oh wow, liquid, woo, 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 that you could spend hours fooling around with. Like that looks real. Like even then, it's like, you know, there's still elements of worlds in VR that's like, well, I know that I'm not in the real world, so to speak. And then there's also the question of like, okay, so like a lot of VR systems are still, you know, still have like controllers, right? So like you still have this very real and possibly not so organic reminder that that you're not performing a task in real life, which again is something that you could potentially you could try to potentially blur that line a bit more by incorporating real world objects into VR experiences, by, you know, with use of like trackers and stuff. So you like pick up a real world object and then like there's a virtual object mapped to its movement, like kind of like how we're trying to do with our with VRBs. Hopefully eventually we'll be able to experiment having like an actual hive that you can pull physical frames out of and like have, so you'd still have you'd have that kind of very tangible physical experience.
So I would
but
say
yeah,
it's nearly yes. Ursina,
May I just add, I think it's exactly for that reason that it's very important to have interdisciplinary teams as well. So from the perspective of didactics and from specialists from the field, be it beekeeping or another field, that you can determine where it's very important to be close to reality, and where you can also where you have a bit of wiggle room, or where you can go on a more abstract level. And as Naomi said, for example, these comms, it's very important that we can simulate the weight, because that's an extremely important indicator for what's going on in the hive. So we will have to find ways of simulating that.
Yeah. But for instance, like when you get into sort of like the environment setting stuff, like that stuff is like, I think we're a bit less concerned if like that is like 100% realistic, since like the main point of the app is kind of focusing around like this intentional movement. So I think as long as we make sure that it's like, okay, this is something that feels real and is encouraging me to perform the kind of behavior that I need to perform in real life, then I think like that is probably the most important part of the experience. So
I want to go to Quentin also, because also you had in the virtual car, you have those vibrating systems as well to really make you feel and sense things. So to mix the reality of the virtual and the reality of the real. So do you think we are ready?
Yeah, it depends the degree of fidelity you have with your driving simulator. Like my personal experience is that we have a like low fidelity simulator because it's not a moving based simulator. So people are pretty immersed in the simulation, but still you don't have the same sensation. Like the feeling of speed is totally different. And also like they don't feel the danger the same way, I would say. Like we have these challenging scenarios, but some people are, it depends also from people to people, it's different. Like some people will be afraid when they bump the deer. We had participants who crashed into the deer I showed you, and some people will not be afraid. So some people were very, very scared, like they couldn't drive again. So we said, okay, now you can drive again. So even with a low fidelity, some people will be totally like in reality, and some others will not, even with a low fidelity simulator. So I would say that it depends both from the behavior of the subject or participant, and also from the environment you are testing in. So yeah.
Thank you. Very interesting, Quentin. Nanatian, you're also interested in technology in another way in your project, but still I would love to hear your opinion on how realistic and how the technology is ready today to help us feel something real.
Yeah, I personally, I think it's a very big question, and I also think it will surely depend on what kind of experience and how real the experience you want to achieve. For example, recently I was supervising a semester project, which is kind of somehow using a serious game to simulate the COVID-19 stuff. So where we will have some simulation of a campus and to simulate a player of a student daily life, while we also want to simulate the virus contamination and how you will contaminate the virus with masks and also the disinfectant stuff. So, but we realize that it's still somehow, for example, the mask on your, we also like use a very simple model to feel like the mask was on yourself, like, but it's not that ideal. It's in a very weird shape. Like, I also know that there are some people using like the virtual nose to reduce cyber sickness, but I think if you really try it, the sensation would be really different from our actual nose, you know. So the feeling, and also like we recently our lab have another decimal glove which could simulate the torque, like the strength, like it's a glove, and when you for example it's if you want to feel a heart bumping, like a virtual heart bumping, and there is a demo, and it's visually you will see that your glove grasping a heart and it's bumping beating at your hand. But then we tried it and we feel like the sensation, like the simulation of the haptic feedback, it's still like kind of in a low quality and far from real or a satisfaction. So yeah, we kind of debating and during our last meeting, so whether it's it's a good device or not. And yeah, it's but I think there's very little gloves recently having this torque sensation to stimulate the strength and also the friction stuff. It's still far from realistic, I would say. Yeah.
I'll try to go one step further in this question because it may be very interesting. In cinemas, for example, we now have these 4D cinemas with a little bit of smell, a little bit of wind, a little bit of water coming in, and the sensation of moving also. But we've not seen that much going on into games for the moment, and not in serious games as I have seen. I have not seen any projects with those kinds of things, even during the whole GSGS symposium, for example. So my question is, finally, maybe we don't need everything, and we don't need maybe the wind, and maybe the beekeepers can try without smelling honey and without the wind in their hair. They can still perform something realistic and good. So the next question is, maybe we don't need more. Maybe we are ready. So do you think we are ready with that? And maybe it's how you can, as Quentin said, how can you take the people in the game with low res? Still, some of them didn't want to hit the deer. So it's not maybe in the realistic, but back to what we talked about in other roundtables, back to how the story is built, how your game is built, that you take the person into it and make them feel it is real. So maybe just another point on that, and I'll move to something else. Maybe Ursina?
I think it really depends on your goal, right? What you want to achieve with your serious game. And it might be that with, you know, if it's more about knowledge and awareness now for bees, that what you say is much more important. But if it's more about diagnostics, that you learn how to assess a hive without disturbing the bees, then you probably also need certain other aspects of the simulation to be very realistic, as for example the haptics of the weight. I think it depends on the goal, on what you want to achieve.
But it seems that for the goals that you are all aiming to, technology is there. Am I right if I said that? You might agree that technology will help in your goals? It's not a problem for you.
Yeah, I think the only thing I'm still thinking about, like, is like eventually having to render all of those bees. Because it's just like because like the thing with like yeah, because like the thing with like at least with the bees that we were using is that they actually turned out to be kind of like computationally expensive, especially since you have like these like if you used Unity before, all of them have this like, what is it? It's like a skin mesh render, or skin mesh render or something like that, which is just like you know, if you have like an animated 3D object in Unity, like they need to have that on it, and then it's like, well, that just makes it really hard to, especially since like with VR, you're having essentially everything is being like rendered twice, and so like having all these bees. And the thing is that like in real life hives, there are like thousands and thousands and thousands of bees. So needing to be able to render all of that is I think part of where like the technology is like, you know, just you know, like it would be nice if it was a bit more powerful in that respect. But that's something that yeah, is
but maybe it will come. Maybe.
Yeah.
So let's say technology is up to the challenge. Another thing that maybe we all need, or you all need in your projects, is literature. And you are all doing it. You are all having projects and writing about them and about the success of them. But for example, Francesco, when you chose this gamifying solution for your project, have you found enough literature on how gamification can actually succeed in the goal that you have? Because of course, GSGS is existing now for a few years. There are some other things about serious games in the world, but I would not say that there are many, and not for many years. So are there enough studies? Are there enough scientific proofs that gamification is one of the key?
I'd say that hopefully for us, there are not yet. So you can still doing some research about that. In my case, I'd say that it depends a lot from where you want to use gamification. There is a sort of common knowledge that we think gamification, it's okay if you want to use it with young people, young adults. Maybe it's not that okay, or it's not accepted if you work with people, with elderly people. I think it's quite complex. We need a lot more studies. I work on another project that is not related to this one that I presented here, but presented at GSGS last year. We use virtual reality with people with intellectual deficiencies. What we want to do is to train them to use to cross the roads, to catch the bus, something like this. So we're in the moving in the public space, let's say. Virtual reality brings a lot of this security, safety. We can do it in virtual reality, not in reality. But we asked this question, is it appropriate to use gamification? For instance, for our public, for our target public, it's quite complex because we know if they think it's a game, maybe they will be more engaged, but they will have a lot of difficulties to make this difference between it's a game or it's reality. I'm learning or I'm just playing. It's right in the topic of this roundtable is what I train in virtual reality. Can I translate it in reality if I think that's a game? I can take maybe a bad habit in virtual reality and then I do it in reality. It depends also in the target population, but for our population it's quite delicate because sometimes they have this problem to make a difference between, let's say, first degree and second degree. So what they see, for us, the technology was enough to make it really concrete, let's say. But we have also the problem on the other side. Is gamification the good choice or not? Literature is something that could help us to find a good direction, but there are a lot of studies that we need to do because for the moment we don't have this answer.
Quentin, I would love to hear you as well, because or Stefano, you can also go on this topic, of course, because for you it's crucial. Can it be replicable, and can you go to someone or some system and say, okay, I have proof that gamification worked, and the people will react the same in real life that they did with the deer in your small virtual car.
Yeah, but I think in driving it's the same. Like if you train people on driving simulation, then they will take bad habits to drive, and so they don't feel the risk of an accident or something on the road. So they may take bad habits, and they would think in the real life it will not be the same. So it can be actually dangerous if you don't make you don't put some limits on what they need to do. This is one impression I had after what Francesco said.
Someone else on that topic? Or maybe it's something also you need for your investors. Maybe it's something you need to tell other people to believe in your project.
I think. Oh, sorry.
Stefano and Naomi?
Yeah, I think also the literature is important also to not repeat mistakes that have been done before. So for instance, we know that a few approaches will work, but only in some conditions that are quite restrained. For example, starting the work with Canton, one of the issues is enough a static simulator, or we need a dynamic one, because yeah, we know that it's quite important to have this simulation. So we can go back to the study literature and see if they are acceptable or not, if at least the scientific community can accept nowadays this kind of simulation. So I think it can be used as guidelines to improve our work. Yeah, for an answer to your question, it's not that easy.
Naomi?
I think, at least for me, like we definitely did look at like strictly like some strictly like serious games stuff when when writing our short paper. But I think in addition to that, like there's a fair amount of stuff out there, especially when it comes to just looking at like education through play. People have been using play to teach other people about certain concepts in the world, etc., for years at this point. And I think that sort of looking at that, like you can even see stuff like this happen, and even if you sort of expand to installations that installations that you might see in museums that might not necessarily, you might look at it and be like, oh well, is that necessarily a game? Is it, but it still has these like it might still have like playful elements that then that it employs to then teach about concepts related to, like, I don't know, science or nature or something like that. I think like I think, yeah, while like serious games as a topic is still something like specifically is still sort of like trying to find like a strong foothold. I think there's a good amount of stuff out there that like is especially, yeah, when you start just looking at like at topics of like related to education through play that that could more generally already, apply to stuff, which is part of what we did.
But then we will have to push a little bit further. Is how do we react in simulations? How do we react in the games? And I would love to hear your experience about the subject that you had in your different projects. But I'll go first to Nana Tian. Do you think that people can react in this VR simulation as they will react in real life? Is that possible, or is it really two different things, the game and the real life?
What do you mean react? What do you want?
Can they have the same reflex? For example, we'll ask the same to Quentin. When they see the deer, they move the steering wheel on the other side of the road, maybe. But is this reaction in the game? Can you translate it then in real life? Is there a real link between those two things, or is there a mental learning that after the game, oh, I thought maybe I should not hit the deer, so maybe next time I'll see a deer, I won't hit it. That you go through a learning process and a how can I say? Yeah, it's a learning process, not a reflex. But if you do it a lot in the game, will it help to do it in the real life? What do you think? Because in your project, you also have something about the difference between real life and virtual life. So that's why I'm asking you the question.
Yeah, because what we recently researched was, I think it's not about a simulation of a real life game, so it's not really quite related to.
It's how people feel. It's how people feel about this virtual reality, and that's very important.
Yeah, I think it's about the knowledge transfer thing is still you need to really have the experiment the experiment to help people like train, to help people remember the task, remember the knowledge, and I think it helps. It might build a memory on the players when they try the task multiple times, and so I think it helps with kind of this kind of gamification stuff or serious game in VR. I think it will help them to transfer the knowledge from the simulation to the real life.
Quentin, how did people react in your project?
So we tested many participants, and I was not here every time we tested a participant, but yeah, I think in our personal experience, it's not the same than in real life. I would say that technology is enough when there is not moral and ethical issues behind. Like when there are ethical and like I just did an experiment here at the university, and the thing was you have this child crossing the road, and then you cannot brake, it's too late, and the automated car will choose who to kill. So like you need to process and think why, and this is different to feel the thing in virtual reality. Like it's totally different than in real life. And I had to answer, and I was like, yes, for me I would say that, but in the real settings, maybe my decision would have been different because you have other factors that influence your choice at this time. So for very dynamic and critical situation, I would say that the technology is not enough, unfortunately. But for like, yeah, static and safe and purposes, then I would say that technology is enough to simulate what you can find in real life. Like in our project, we have two different aspects we are investigating, and both are takeover quality. So how a driver is taking over the control of the car. And for that, you need a very high fidelity simulator if you want to have some reliable results that you can apply to real life. And on the other hand, we are investigating situation awareness. So how the driver is aware of what's happening in the car. And for that, I think the instructions you give to participants are more important than the realistic, if the scenario is realistic or not. So as you said, Ursina, before, I also it really depends on what you are investigating and what results or goals. What are the goals of your research? I would say, yeah. But yeah, for the driving, it's very interesting. Yeah.
I remind also other participants that if you want to answer one of the questions or participate, you can also do it. I want to go back to Ursina for one question, because there's two different things. There's behavior and there's some moves or some technical aspects. And you said something very interesting about the weight of the object that you have to move and things. So my question will be, do you think we are ready to train in VR for specific movements? For example, weigh the thing and then move my other hands and do something. That's okay.
Yeah.
Can we influence really the whole behavior, which is more like Quentin said, another thing, and with also moral aspects or social aspects in it?
Yeah. I think there are various things we can try and achieve. And I think for certain things like the haptic training, we still need to develop, depending on what it's like, pilot simulators, right, where you have haptic training, and that could be a goal. And when we talked to, we had carried out a usability test with beekeepers, and they had very different degrees of experience. And we saw that with beginners, this haptic training was they thought that was very important that we develop in that direction, because that's what they struggle with. You have to be really quick and secure movement, so not to aggravate the bees, and be done with it again. And that's what they were struggling with, while more experienced beekeepers, they were interested in we called it diagnostics. Like when you look at a comb, how can I assess quickly, is this normal, are they healthy, is there a problem? And so what does a colony look like, in spring, in autumn, what is normal? And so I think there are different goals. And when it comes to ethical and moral, I think that's another story with different kinds of limitations as well, between the transfer of the game to reality. And I mean, there's also knowledge, right? We could also build in a part where it's just about knowledge building and create a game about that. And we're still sort of thinking about what would be the most valuable for where are the gaps in the beekeeper training that we could fill with our prototype or with our project.
Francesco, I'm turning to you. Thank you, Ursina. It was very interesting. Francesco, you're trying to change for environmental causes, to change your behavior with the game. So are you just luring people in something with the game, or are you trying to change the behavior of the people behind? It's another way of translating a game into reality.
Yeah, it's a very good point. Like a common accusation against gamification. You are trying to make me do something, like force me to see this by like in a cunning way.
Or to forget reality. You're trying to make me forget reality and do something I wouldn't do if I had seen that.
Yeah, it's a very good point. Like in games right now, there are a lot of these free-to-play games that with the mechanics from games, like looting, something like this, they not force, but like they're very seducing a user to buy new stuff and so on. So it's a quite delicate idea, but it's something like about I'd say psychological bias. And then you can also choose if you want to use it for the good or for the bad. In the end, we are all biased. So in a point, you can say it's better if you need to use it. It's a good idea if you use it for a good reason. But in my point of view, we are not trying to like doing something wrong. We are very open on what we want to do. In our system, we want also to pay people that offer a service to the system. There is no just this gamification part. And we also want to put value if they are doing something for the community, for the local community. We are checking a few solutions right now to understand if it's possible to understand if they are providing a service that's useful for their local community, for instance. How to put this, to give a value to this. So my answer is a bit ambiguous, let's say, but I think we have to be careful, but it's a good tool. As any other tool, we have to use it with the good intention, let's say.
How do you all adapt with difficulty in your games? Because the one thing we said in the beginning is we all behave differently in games, and we all have different levels in games as we do in real life. For example, we have the same with the beekeepers. You said you took someone who had quite no knowledge at all and some experts. So how do you manage in your projects the difference and the difficulty of people? Maybe Quentin, some of the people had never used a driving simulator, and some of them had in their home a driving simulator that was even better than yours. So how can you manage that and still have something useful for the general population? Or is it just impossible to have the general population and you need to target? That's maybe one of the answers.
So yeah, but for our experiments, of course, we have very skilled drivers who are driving a lot, and we are mainly testing students. So of course, they are not that much experienced with driving. And so we are first asking questions, of course, about their driving experience and how many kilometers they are doing per week or per year. So it's already a good indicator for us to know the driving experience of each one of the participants who are coming into the simulator. So we can still use it to Then for the analysis afterwards, you could use this measure to mitigate the results. Then also, of course, the instructions again are very important. So we are testing in a level of automation that is not existing in the real life yet, and people don't know how this kind of vehicles is working, especially for this car asking you for taking over control. So you really need to take some time to explain them how it works, and to be sure that all participants are on the same level before starting the experiment. We always have this training session of 5 minutes where they can drive the simulator manually control. Even though they are not driving afterwards during the session, still we let them drive. So at least all people have the same time to test the scenario. And then we are also showing them, so we are triggering false takeover request. So each participant experienced 3 fake takeover requests so that they can see what it looks like and what it would looks like in the real life. So yeah, basically, of course, yeah, you have different participants coming, but with instructions, questionnaires, and training sessions, I think it already helped to have the participants in the same condition, even though there are difference in skills and knowledge for the driving, but it's more general for other topics.
Thank you, Quentin. So as I understand, there are no difficulty levels in the game. You're trying to level the people before the game, and you're also, of course, monitoring and writing it down. Naomi, you had also in your project very different players, but there's no difficulty level as well. You didn't try to do a Hive expert one when you have only 10 seconds to find the queen bee, and another with a lot more time.
Yeah, that was something that we definitely want to that we want to get more into in the future with this project. Is yeah, definitely having varying difficulty levels of various exercises for instance, increasing levels of expertise. But I think in addition to that, I think we talked a little bit about this in the presentation. Is because there is also that issue of different kinds of players that we're targeting, needing to learn in different kinds of ways, possibly even within each of those subgroups of like beginner, intermediate, advanced, different, even within different levels of beekeeping experience, people might learn differently, and that's why we'd eventually like to have a system set up where people can pick and choose which kinds of exercises they would like to go through, and possibly like what order they would like to be able to structure their learning process how they would like to be able to, and be able to see, okay, so I need to get more comfortable with this, and this, so I'm going to do these 3 types of exercises. That's really something that we'd like to do to be able to accommodate different kinds of players and different kinds of learners.
Thank you, Naomi. We are heading towards the end of this roundtable, so I'll get back to the core of what I wanted to ask you today. And I'll go first, and I'll give you my point of view, and then I'll let you all react on that topic. The question was that we are all behaving differently in games, and we addressed different types of things. For example, technology. I'm also agreeing. We have technology that really can help, and we have it right now. I'll just give you one example. I've played a VR game in Japan in a small room. It was a fighting game with a gun and everything. But the interesting thing was I had to walk on a small bridge made out of wood. It was like 10 centimeters wide, and it was really a deep mountain on both sides. And I knew I was in a room with the carpet and that nothing could happen to me. But the thing that they did in this room, there was just a real wood bridge in the room. So when I stepped on it, there was a difference. When I felt it in my feet, it was a difference, and there were edges. I knew there was just 1 centimeter high, but it was difficult for me to cross this 2 or 3 meters, because in the VR, there was a huge gap. And so I think technology is ready. That was my first thing. Then literature, we are all contributing, I hope, to having some literature, and that's thanks also to GSGS and all those events around games and what we can do with games. So I think we still can do things with game, and we are proving it by doing some of the games and the things we are doing. But then we get to the bottom of it. I think we can, and that's my point of view, and then I'll let you give yours. I think we can learn games. We can learn through games, that's for sure. And we can learn a lot through emotions and through serious games. And that's what we are all trying to do with those projects. But I think it's a lie to say that what we do in games is what we will do in real life, because we don't behave the same in games. I've seen very shy people bragging around or playing like they were bragging around in games. I've seen very loud people playing very cautiously in games and collecting all the coins. So my point of view is game is a reality, and we play in a way that we are, and maybe it's close to how real we are inside, but that's for psychiatrists to say. But I don't think that you can behave in game as you will do in real life. But I still think we can train a lot of things in games and do them really better in real life. But I don't think you can really translate behavior from one to another. But that's my point of view, and I'll let every one of you have a final word on that. How do you think we can really translate or change behavior or do something with games? And we'll go around. Quentin, we'll start with you.
Yeah, to come back to what you said, I do agree. For driving, it's the same again with this feeling of danger. It really depends on the participants you have and interacting with technology. So for people, they will behave very naturally and will be scared if the deer crossing the road. And for some others, it will not work, or the level of technology is not enough, so that they feel in danger with this deer. So I guess even if you have the highest fidelity driving simulator, it really depends on the participant itself. So yeah, you really need to take into account the behavior and the skills of participants if you want to compare the results you have with the game and simulation, if you want to translate the results with the reality. That would be my conclusion.
And I was afraid to ask, but I hope you didn't play with the aim of hitting the deer.
No. They had enough time to break or avoid it, and there was no traffic. So
I guess just to see what it meant, and it's one of the things we do in games. We try to fail. That's one of the things we do in games. How does it feel when I fail? We don't do it in real life most of the time, or most of the people. Thank you, Quentin. Francesco.
Yeah, I totally agree with your point of view. Something that I'd like to add, that the limit is not always the technology. Maybe there is this limit of technology, of course, but it's also the fact that we know that we are in a simulation, in a game. This changes our behavior. So it means the technology should be that good that we forget that we are in a simulation or a game. then it will be the end, let's say, because like Elon Musk think that we are all in a simulation right now. So yeah, that's I think something that we can take a message, let's say. Then about literature, at this point, there is something else also, because maybe there is a base of knowledge that we know that we can learn in virtual reality from a game. But the point also to get this knowledge out there, because sometimes we propose projects about the gamification, they don't know the difference. Some expert judging the project doesn't know the difference between serious game and gamification, so that they think it's not that serious, our project. So I think something that we have to thank also conference like GSGS is to try to, let's say, diffuse this knowledge. It's quite useful. We need also this step, not just the knowledge that there is this knowledge, but also to talk about it.
Thank you very much, Francesco. Nana-chan?
Okay, so because I have a little experience in the gamification field, but I actually did some research on gamification, educational gamification. So I would agree that the knowledge transfer from the game to the actual like paper exam or actual programming stuff, and yeah, I think it's very different, like because that time we're trying to gamify a data science course, and to make a game on data science is very hard already, and to make it more close to the real knowledge, like the knowledge that the students need to master is also very difficult. So, and to say that the final exams and paper exams, and also the real like programming, the when a student step into a company and they have to do a real project, it's very different from that. So yeah, I would say it's still inconclusive about whether the behavior will change and will be similar to the real life. And I also find that like, but it was 2 years, like 3 years ago, and I also find the literature in this field in either gamification and also in my current field like cyber sickness, it's also needs a lot of improvements. Like I did some literature review, and I find the experiments are a lack of quality, like lack of high quality experiments in the field. And also some, especially some did not really report or not really focus on the individual differences, like you said, like because different people really behave differently and also have different backgrounds, but they did not actually really take those factors into account into the analysis too. So I think there's a lot of improvements in the research field too. Yeah.
Thank you very much. We'll go shortly to Naomi, and then Ursina and Stefano. I'll let you conclude at the end of that.
Yeah, I think at this point it's really hard to make an experience like this where it's like there's not going to be some kind of discrepancy between the game and the real world. Although I think even though that's the case, I think it's still really valuable to point out that, like, I guess at least in my opinion, it's like one of the most powerful things that one of the most powerful elements I think of I guess specifically if we're looking specifically at VR training, for instance, is that ability to be able to fail and to be able to fail safely. and to be able to fail safely in a way that has you at least, using your hands or like, doing some kind of tactile activity, because that is the way, being able to sort of like conduct almost like this constant like self-experimentation is a super powerful way of learning, and is something that VR does really well, and I think is something that VR it'd be good to use VR for that even more in the future. So yeah, I think that's kind of where VR is heading at the moment. So yeah.
Thank you very much, Naomi. Ursina?
I agree with you all that we behave differently, definitely in a game than in real life. But maybe the learning mechanisms are there are a variety of different mechanisms, and maybe what we take away, so what we learn through a game is not necessarily about what we do in a game. So we might, from running over the deer, we might just be aware, oh, oops, yeah, there are deer in the woods. The takeaway might be different from, it's actually maybe an interesting experience to once run over the deer, even though we would never do that in real life. So I think it's important that we think about the side effects and what we want to achieve, and how we could maybe build that message in, even though it's not really linked to the behavior in the game. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Ursina, for this brilliant example of what we can expect from and learn from a game. Stefano, I'll let you conclude. I'll thank the GSGS for organizing the organization of this virtual session. It was very interesting to have all of these authors and project holders, and I'll have really a big clap for you all, because you have amazing projects, and it was a pleasure to challenge you and to speak with you on those aspects during those few weeks. It was a long GSGS, but a good one. Thank you.
Thank you. It was also a pleasure for us to have you, Julien, and all the participants here all along these 5 sessions, 5 virtual sessions, or 2 sessions with the demonstration. It was a long journey that we started at the end of September, and now up to now it was only possible because all of you participated, writing paper, participating with the presentation, creating interesting roundtable. So I think it's thanks to you all that it's possible to have this event. So it is to blame the COVID that it is a little bit less interactive than in the past years. We hope then the next year we will come back in a more physical and interactive way. At the time now we are using some virtual device to communicate. They are doing quite well, but it's still not the same that to meet in real life. At least the next year, maybe we have to try with some headset, maybe if COVID is still here. So I hope not. To conclude, for me, it was really to thank all the people that helped in the organization. First of all the executive committee. So here we have just Olivier now that is connected, and all the other people. So Stéphane Gobron, Yacine Bekike that was here before, Olivier, as I said, Samuel Rossiti, Gordon Savicic, and them. So big thanks for the organization. It would be not possible to have GSGS without them. And I want also to thank Julien Sen. He's not connected, but it's the big working bee behind the GSGS. Without him collecting all the papers, helping in the review, helping in thousands of tasks, it was not possible. So he is part of the administrative committee, and with him there is also all the people that helped to the publication, to the review of the papers, to correct the spelling and so on. It was really a big thanks to all of them. They are working behind the scenes, but they are crucial to have them, and at least, all the people that participated to this session. So it was a pleasure for me to host you all for a few sessions. So I hope to see you again. So the next year, with there are a lot of papers that are first work, first study, and so we enjoy to listen to you, to listen to your findings and so on. Okay, thank you all, and stay safe. Also, if you are already a little bit sick, but try anyway. And yeah, see you next time.
See you next year. Thanks again.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Very nice. Bye bye.